Hey, I'm Clever Pigeon, and this is my post-commentated speedrun of An Outcry. This is the Ursa Minor category, and that's the name of what I think, and what I imagine most others would think, is the best ending of the game. There are 5 endings, and I think this is the most positive one. There's a lot of cool stuff in this game. It's got a unique combat system. There's a lot of dialogue routing to get the most optimal text box choices. A bunch of careful movement routing, and this quasi point-and-click section, text adventure. It's very interesting. If you're from a marathon committee, thanks very much for considering An Outcry for your marathon. I appreciate it very much. And I hope I can show you what makes it tick and what's cool about it. If you are just casually viewing this, then I hope I can do the same, you know? So let us go ahead and get into it. So start a new game, obviously. If you have a save file already, it will detect that you've got one and it'll let you skip the really long intro. We're going to do that. And time starts clearing this text box. There you go. So in this first section, the prologue, it introduces you to the characters. There are 4 people on the same floor as our protagonist who we need to talk to move the game along. There's Mr. Schmidt, Mrs. Eisen, as mentioned there, Ms. Yildirim, who lives in that door, and Anne Pierrot, who is the friend of our protagonist. We only need to talk to Schmidt and Anne. It's actually optional in the prologue to talk to Eisen and Yildirim. So, some careful dialogue stuff coming up. I've rooted out all of these choices, by the way. Pretty much every one I've timed myself to check which is the most optimal one to pick. Most optimal one of the lightest to pick, by the way, is the trans flag one, trans rights. So at the moment, our protagonist, who is referred to as the Unnamed, is looking for a lighter and some cigarettes to go and smoke in the courtyard of their flat. This game is set in Vienna on the night of the 14th of October 2017. There's an argument here between Schmidt and Esma Yildirim, who works as a janitor in this flat also. Unfortunately, there are 2 options. It is the fastest to do the most obvious option and just walk past the argument instead of getting involved. Which is sad, but all in the name of speed, I guess. So, you'll notice it looked like there was only one option there. There is a second one. In this game, there is something rather unique you can do, which is you get a secret dialogue option in many cases if you cancel out of the dialogue choice and reject whatever options you've been given. So sometimes you'll see me do that, and the Unnamed will say something that it didn't seem like they could say. Anyway, we got a lighter from Anne, we got our cigarettes from Schmidt after the argument, and he makes that really quite uncomfortable noise. We walk down, we've got to walk outside and check our mail first. Unfortunately, it's been left outside and has been run over. You can come out onto the street at various points in the game. We only come out twice, once here and once at the end. So we're not going to look at the pieces of paper, but we do see our book over there. And then I've got to be careful not to move too quickly here, because there is a bug that can make the screen go black. And you've got to pause and unpause and do weird things to deal with it. And now we can finally go into the courtyard, once Anna has let us back in. At this point in the game, prompts you to save. In a minute. Cigarettes are actually what you use as save items in this game. You have a limited number, kind of like Resident Evil. Or the early Resident Evil games. We just quit out, we don't need to save again. And it advances anyway. And with that, the prologue is over. And the fun really begins, I guess. Things are about to kick up a notch. So first you get the choice between the two main routes in this game. You get the follow route and the ignore route, depending on how you react to the outcry that has just happened. The best ending requires you to follow it. So we're going to pay attention. Bit more dialogue to get through, where it is revealed that these birds can talk. And oh, they speak in rhymes. I've actually spoken to the dev of this game, and I worked on the v3.0 as this as a little bit of QA and proofreading. But yeah, word of warning from Quinn K: never make your antagonist speak in rhyme, because you'll remember every line and they'll get stuck in your head. Now I've got to go back up to Anne's room, because we've locked ourselves out of our apartment. We need Anne to call us a locksmith. There are some more dialogue choices coming up, and we talked to Anne about the outcry that we just heard, but not before we get ambushed by some bird hallucinations. Anne offers the unnamed a drink, and we're gonna do another cancel out of the choice. Oh no, we're not, I'm wrong. Sorry, this one's for bourbon. We do another cancel out in a moment. If you cancel out there, you get to have some orange juice. Bourbon is fastest. Even though it's kind of strong, and the unnamed is not the greatest fan. and we talk about the Outcry. All these, those two and the next two dialogue choices, you can just mash through. They are effectively the same in speed. They don't change the dialogue. And calls us a locksmith. We can just go straight up to her, and you don't have to look around or anything. And that auto summons the locksmith, I guess. There we cancelled out, so we don't finish our drink. Save a few seconds on gulping the rest of that down. Got a little more walking to do now. Back to our apartment on the other end. Excuse me, on the other end of the corridor. Some more fun little text taunting us. Guys, our door is open. The unnamed warriors, it might be their ex, but we can go in. And once we're in, the unnamed hangs up their coat and then we go to bed. There's a fun small time save here. So if you go to bed, the unnamed turns off the lights first, obviously, but the light switch is on the back wall and you can turn it off yourself, and it saves a little bit of time because the unnamed doesn't move as optimally as you do. So after this scary radio message, get attacked in the night, wake up. There are now birds in this house. You can see one on the bookshelf. We don't actually have to fight that one. We do have to fight this one in the shower. So now we get into the combat. These, being the introductory enemies, are the most simple. Your pretty bog standard shrikes. And if you mash fast enough, you can just get in 3 basic kick attacks and deal with them. There's one more hiding in the oven. And bit of bad luck there. The bird managed to attack before we could get all of our kicks in. And it healed. We're going to heal there, just to make sure we're fine for the next fight. We lift up the coat, and there is a shrike and a flying shrike. If there is more than one enemy, pretty much for every fight actually, other than the first 2, it is better to try and heal yourself until the game lets you flee. So a certain length of time or number of moves into the fight, the game will say your enemies have gotten tired, the unnamed can now flee. Like that. This game is quite difficult to win in most of the fights by yourself. You do get another party member later on, but on your own, it's very difficult. So it is faster and honestly safer as well to work on healing and defending yourself until you can escape the fight. The unnamed is now bleeding out, and we have to talk to each of their floor mates in turn. So first it's Schmidt, and he is dealing with stuff. Another cancel out choice there. Now we get to see Esma again, Miss Yildirim. The first thing to do is ask, and then just sort of not say anything more. Everyone's dealing with their own stuff tonight. Now, in this route, this is the first and only time we see Mrs. Eisen, whose first name is Gertrude. She is very rude. She is in her 90s and has a bit of a cough problem, and yeah, she's not very nice to talk to, so we cancel out of that, and then she still lectures you, and then we leave her alone for the rest of the run. Goodbye, Eisen. Anne thankfully does notice that there's a problem. Invites us in and patches us up. More dialogue choices. I have notes on which ones are the fastest for this whole route. So pick the second one, then we're going to pick the third one, and I'm going to get it wrong in this run. And then we're going to pick the first one. There you go. Yeah, it's tough to remember it all. Keep it straight in your head, even if you've got the notes. If you overmash as well, you can easily accidentally pick the first option when you're not supposed to. Fran's got a sledgehammer. We are not going to be dealing with the sledgehammer yet. That comes later. We do get this pretty cool scene of Anne getting ready to lay down the law. But the bird says it wants us to follow it. Specifically, only the unnamed, so we are going to do that. Once we get downstairs, following the bird, it jumps over the edge. Once we get downstairs, before that, we do get this space in between, which we get, and we just cancel out of this choice. Otherwise, you get a big thing of dialogue from the narrator. It says we can save. You go and sit on the chair to save, but we don't need to. Now we can do a cutscene skip. There are a few cutscenes in this game that let you press a specific button combination to cancel out of the choice of letting you go to the cutscene, and then skip it, and it gives you this one because the game acts like the antagonists are mad for letting you skipping the cutscene. Anyway, this fight is quite difficult and quite risky, quite easy to die to. There are quite a few attacking enemies. There is one that heals them. Thankfully, you don't actually have to fight that bird man who was speaking just a moment ago. Yeah, it's you could get ganged up on if you aren't fast enough or lucky enough, and just have your health bitten out of you. And now we run back inside. Schmidt's on his way out. You get two different options, both of which amount to saying, "I don't care what you're on about, Schmidt." Take the phone. Oh, after this one. See, tricky to get straight. You really got to lock in for these. So he didn't really tell us, but there is a fire in his apartment. This will become relevant later. For now, though, back to Anne. We're okay. We get a heal here, actually, which is very helpful. There are various heals at points in the game, which means that most of the time you don't have to do it manually. So at this point, after Anne's done talking, you get an option to look around the apartment, go into Anne's room, go into Anne's kitchen, but it's fastest, obviously, just to walk straight out. So now we get going with Anne to try to take some shelter and warn the others about things. So we're going to go and warn Mrs. Yildirim. But first we get this long, messed up horror corridor. Here? Yeah. You get slowed down a bit. Get ganged up on by the birds, and thankfully it was all some kind of hallucination / dream. You go on through. I like to pretend I'm racing Anne, but she walks apparently as fast as we do. It's important here to talk to Anne rather than talk to the door, because Anne insists on taking the lead. And here, you'll notice that Anne has been misgendering the non-binary protagonist of the game the whole time. And now you finally get to correct her by correcting Esma. If you haven't corrected Anne at all at this point, the unnamed will like go off on her in Esma's apartment and really like yell at her. It's not out of malice, by the way. Anne's just a little forgetful. So we just found out that the unnamed has a name. That has a name, even the name Asta, and we've been introduced to Esma. This is actually a kind of hidden thing. You can talk to Anne, or go and talk to her child, or Esma's child rather, who's called Alp, or is that Denise? One of them. But yeah, it's faster to talk to the chair, and then that gives you a little monologue bit, and then you get this. Briefly, control swaps to Esma here, which is very interesting. First choice is just the fastest one, and again, and then eventually we're just going to be out with it. They go and look at the TV. Now, at this point, there are various interactions you can do, and there is a little counter that goes up to 5, and when it hits 5, it's time to watch the news. The best way to do it is to talk to Esma's children, Alp, who's the one in red, and Denise, who's the older one in blue, who was the one we saw earlier, by the way. I got one of those choices wrong for Alp. I didn't have to go and touch the wall there. But, you know, overmashing and such. Another cancelled out choice. You get to talk about Asta's hair, or lack of it. And actually fastest just to say the whole truth. And now the news is on. There we go. This is the Shrike leader, the Birdman, and he is expressing basically his desire to do a fascist coup of the whole of the nation. At this point, Asta has had enough and leaves. You can see those flashing lights through the window. If you walk into those lights, you have to do an encounter with an enemy. Thankfully, we don't actually have to cross paths with any of them. But we do have to deal with this thing in the courtyard. This is the Panopticon Shrike. Now, the fastest thing you actually have to do here, well, that you have to save here. The game forces you to save. and you can either go and talk to one of the shrikes in front of the panopticon to do that, or you can just save straight through your inventory with a cigarette. And of course it's fastest just to do that, because you don't have to walk over the courtyard. Now a bunch of stuff is going to start happening, even more so than before. Now begins what I talked about earlier, the text adventure part of the run. So this part is actually in first person and kind of works like a point and click game. You move around with the arrow keys and interact with stuff. So we have to first go and find Anne and Esma. The fire is really getting to the building now. That's all the smoke. We can't go any further without some kind of protection, so thankfully there is a respirator here. Got to do some quick menuing here. This whole section works like quick menuing. Then we could just make our way up to the top floor. First we have to go left into Esma's apartment, where they last were, and find out that they aren't there. But thankfully we do have Anne's spare key, which is going to let us go to where they actually are, in Anne's. But before that, our friendly narrator gets attacked, and wait for it. Narration is now Birdness's task. So now the birds have taken over and they're going to narrate evil things to us. Anne is here, Esma and her kids are in here as well. Unfortunately, the birds have taken the sledgehammer, and we need that thing not only to fight as well as we can, but to get this ending, we need the sledgehammer. Anne joins our party at this point. She heals us after every battle, and as she tells us, we can't let Asta die. So these first few, we have to go and get to the sledgehammer, which is on the left side of the third floor. So we use our kick attack here, and Anne has a stomp attack, which is pretty decent. And also has a good healing move. So that's our way through there. You actually can't quit out of these fights. If you flee, the enemies stay where they are in the text adventure. So these ones you have to fight through, but thankfully it's a bit easier with Anne. Not impossible to die though, not out of the realm of possibility. So you've got to be careful. Thankfully the menus remember the move you last picked, so you can just mash most of the time, stomp and kick. And that helps with the speed aspect of it. When that little bar fills up, as you can see, that's when we get to attack again. Or move again. The step back option, you might be able to see a little bit in the menus. By the way, that does nothing. That's just an RPG Maker thing. So yeah, it's going to tell us to flee, but yeah, the enemies do not despawn if you flee in the text adventure. Here's our hammer. You can have An encourage you and give a nice encouraging rallying cry, but the buff it gives you is not enough for the lengthy dialogue in each battle to be worth it, and the dialogue is different every time as well. On this floor, the narrator tells us there are no stairs. We have to cancel out and ignore the narrator to descend. One more fight in the text adventure. These enemies are all pretty powerful and decently fast moving, as you can see. So it's very important to keep Anne, but also Asta, especially, with a decent amount of HP, because if you die, you go back to when you last saved, and that is at the very start of text adventure when it forced you to. A bit more dialogue. There is a set of things you have to do to get out of this most quickly. So first you have to pick the blank option, which the bird narrator calls an invalid choice, and then you hit X to go out. All the other options do not help you get free, but doing those two in that specific order gets you out the fastest. Anne, Esma, Alp, and Denise are going to run at this point, but for the best ending, we need to stick around. And in fact, at this point, you do have to stick around, but there are other choices coming up that change the ending. Another cutscene skip there, and it's a long cutscene. But again, the antagonists act mad that you dared to skip their cutscene. But you know, it's faster. This game does have a few decent number of like fourth wall meta elements to it, most of which you don't see here. You got to refuse the terrific birdnesses option to join you, or you got to refuse its request for you to join it. Rather, doing so would get you a worse ending, and not the one we are looking for. Now I have to leave. And this is a tough fight because these enemies in particular can inflict burning on you, which is kind of like poison damage in Pokemon. This is what you have to do to get the Ursa Minor ending, and you have to have the sledgehammer in order to do it. You cannot even start this fight without the sledgehammer. You go further into the apartment for the third ending in this route. Just trying to be a little bit careful while also maintaining decent pace, because almost every enemy in this game can hit pretty hard, but with that, thankfully, you get to escape and walk up a little bit, whack the birdness with a hammer, and that is almost it. We got a little ending cutscene, and time in about 20 seconds from now is when the ending screen appears. We've got a bit of dialogue to get through first. Smash through all of this, and time. Yeah, that's An Outcry, a speedrun of the Ursa Minor ending. Thank you very much for watching. Again, I hope I got across what I think is cool about this run, and some of the work that's gone into it, because I'm the only runner of this game, and I did all of the work on checking the fastest dialogue and little movement optimizations. I did all that myself, so I'm quite proud of it. And through getting noticed by the developer Quinn K, I got to do some QA for the 3.0 version and a tiny bit of. So yeah, again, thank you to any marathon committees, and thank you to anyone watching for any other reason. I appreciate it a whole bunch, and I hope you enjoyed. See you for now.